Welcome to the 6th grade curriculum preview for the second 6 weeks. This 6 weeks, your curriculum focuses on poetry and informational text. And so we're going to take a look at some of the standards that have been traditionally low scoring for our district. For each standard, we'll look at the alignment document and then hit some highlights for what it is. So we'll start with Standard 4, which deals with poetry. If you notice, in 5th grade, students really focused on sound effects and how they helped a poem's meaning. But in 6th grade, it is an introduction standard to the first time figurative language, including personification, similes, metaphors, and hyperbole, contribute to the meaning of a poem. Students have not been introduced to these terms probably in the past. They may have a mild understanding, but they probably do not understand them as a whole, and they really have not ever looked at anything beyond just identifying personification, a metaphor, a simile, or an example of hyperbole. This is critical for our 6th graders to master, as we don't hit figurative language again in the same way. It's a supporting standard, meaning that it can be tested but not necessarily, but it's a huge building block for what we want kids to do. We have to move beyond identification and look at what these figurative language examples do to the meaning of a poem. Why would the author include those, and how did it help the author make meaning? Standard 8 is a readiness standard, and it partners really well with the standard on poetry, as it focuses on sensory language. Students are asked to focus on author's craft and how the author again creates meaning through stylistic elements and figurative language, especially through personification, hyperbole, and refrains. This is also an introduction for our 6th graders, as they have not specifically been focused on meaning. They're probably familiar with hyperbole and personification, but not the idea of what a refrain is. They will need help in modeling and moving beyond simply identifying those elements. The Strand 9 and 6.9a are both really important. The Strand 9 is a readiness standard, and 9a is a supporting standard. This standard deals with the main idea and author's purpose, and it partners clearly with our process skills. Students will really need to read multiple pieces on the same topic. Then they will need to identify the stated or implied purpose of each piece. Lastly, they compare and contrast the purposes of the different pieces. For example, they might read an informational piece, such as a letter and then a letter to the editor, and a persuasive piece about global warming. They must consider each piece individually to find the stated or implied purpose, and then they'll be able to compare and contrast with specific emphasis on the purpose. This is an introduction to this task for these students, as they've not had experience in doing the compare and contrast. Strand 10 is a readiness strand, and 10a is also a readiness standard. This standard also partners with our process skills. Students in 6th grade should be familiar with summarizing. It's a grade 2 standard introduction, and so they need to be able to do this. They should come in with some knowledge, but they also need to remember that summary does not include opinion. Strand 10 again is a readiness, and Strand 10 and Standard 10C is a readiness standard as well. This standard gives us trouble every year for organizational patterns. It's not a new standard for 6th graders, but we continue to struggle, and we struggle in all grade levels. It's important that we identify the type of organization that an author uses, but it's even more important that we identify how the organization helps develop the meaning of the piece, specifically the main idea or the author's viewpoint. For example, if an author used a problem and solution organizational pattern, how does that help develop the main idea, and why would the author choose to use it? We have to move beyond just the identification of the pattern. 17C is helping students develop their skills for the open-ended response for the English 1 end-of-course exam. Students have not been introduced to this type of writing before this year. It's very important that students learn the 3 parts of an OER: the answer, the explanation or commentary, and the text evidence. and that they have practice in creating these responses. We don't expect that students are able to master this skill. Rather, it's just the expectation that they begin to learn the process, especially in 6th grade. We don't expect students to be doing this well, as they've never had any experience in it. So to work with some of these issues and others, we develop student tasks to help provide some guidance. The tasks for this unit include tasks on 10C, organizational patterns, 15B on writing poems, 17A, the expository essay, 19AVI, conjunctive adverbs, 8A, stylistic elements and figurative language, and 9A, author's purpose. You can find these student tasks under resources in the unit documents section in Unit 2, and I would highly encourage you to use them. I hope you found this helpful.